All right, it's Wednesday, December 18th. I'm leaving the office a little early today. Drove in a little late, leaving a little early. Kind of seems backwards, but it's because I started my day pretty early. I had to be on calls with folks in Europe. It says the wing is stuck on the car. I had to be on calls with folks in Europe early this morning. Not super early, but I had to make sure I had updates and stuff before then. So I basically started my work day like right after 6 a.m. So I even told someone on my team right before I was leaving, I said, I'm going to listen to my own advice and I'm going to leave early because I started early. No guilt, right? Got to practice it. No, but it was a productive day. Got to meet with people for some stuff that I need to coordinate, so that felt really good to get that out of the way. But I know you don't care because you want to hear about the topics. I got topics. No one likes my rambling, right? Got to get into the meat of it. So I got a topic that I want to talk about from a commenter, and I meant to pull it up. I'm at this light. Maybe I'll do that if I can. This is hopefully not going to switch on me. It's switching on me. Okay, whatever. My apologies, friend, if I am missing some of this, but I think that the way that the comment went was something along the lines of this person is working at a startup and it's actually just them and I don't know if this is the whole company or just on sort of like the development side, but it's like the founder, their boss, right? It's the only other developer. And sorry if I got that wrong, but it sounds like their boss is the only other developer. That's how I think the point that matters here. And it seems like they're saying that their boss, right, makes them, they seem like they're agitated. It makes them feel like they're kind of afraid to ask questions. And this is, I think, in response to one of the other videos I put out the other day. So in terms of like onboarding, asking questions and stuff like that. So I wanted to talk through this because I think it's really important. And I was trying to think about like how I wanted to talk about this. And I think there's a few different angles I want to look at. There's sort of the obvious one that's in my mind, which is kind of like around, making sure that you have boundaries, making sure that you have a safe place to ask questions, a safe place to fail. Like these things make a good environment. So I wanted to talk about that. And then I wanted to talk about like soft skills, empathy, and kind of look at things from different angles. So that's my plan as I go through this. Like I've said before, like I don't rehearse these. These are just like a stream of consciousness. But I want, like for this one especially, I wanted to make sure I had something that was like a couple things I want to at least get to. So we'll see how that goes. A friendly reminder to folks, if you want me to talk through different things about career development, software engineering, things like that, let me know. Hopefully this person turns left. There we go. Just comment, and the more detail you add, the more perspective I can try to give. And if you're not comfortable commenting, that's totally cool. If you want to send me a message so that it's totally anonymous, that's great. Just look for Dev Leader on social media. And send me a message and just, again, same thing. The more detail you provide, the more context I have with answering. I think I've already had one viewer it was kind of funny. They were apologizing for not offering more detail in their question. But no, oh my God, that's bright. Oh my goodness, I can't see anything. This is crazy. It's fine. Like, if you don't provide a lot of detail, I unfortunately kind of give a more generic answer. So I'm just calling it out so that if you want more specifics, you can do that. I can't get over how bright the sun is, the angle, because I'm leaving a little bit earlier than usual. This is nuts. Like, if I move my head, I can't see, like, you see how much sun's on my face? That's nuts. And as soon as it peeks out from the visor, where are my sunglasses? Man. I think this is a situation where, like, I was driving with my wife or something and I might have put them in the other vehicle. Oh my God. But okay, let's get into it. So the first part, like I said, I wanted to talk through was around kind of my thoughts around like boundaries with this type of thing. What I think is a good environment versus a bad environment to work in. And I think that people, like, you want to strive to find, so if you're someone who's not sort of controlling the environment and you're part of it, you want to find an environment that makes you feel like you have a safe place to fail. It's like psychological safety is a phrase that gets used. If you don't have psychological safety, then it's really difficult to be effective. You'll constantly feel like you're being scrutinized for everything or afraid to like try and do things. And then, there's consequences if there's ever a mistake. So it really impedes you, and it's like, it's not a good spot to be. And if you're someone that has influence over the environment, right? Sorry, just merging lanes here. There's something to keep in mind. So as we get into the second half of this conversation, I'm going to try to talk more about this from the other direction. But I want you to keep that in mind, because I don't know people's backgrounds that are listening. Not creating a safe place for people, like psychological safety, making sure that they know it's okay to make mistakes and ask questions. This can like be devastating in terms of productivity, engagement, and stuff like that. It's a terrible spot to work, okay? And you might not realize it, but you might be contributing to it. And that's why I want to call attention to it. So for this individual that wrote the comment, right, I can understand what you're saying. To be in a position where you're like, I got questions, or, pardon me, if you're a junior trying to make progress on stuff, and like the one person that you have to go to is your boss, that already creates a bit of a weird dynamic sometimes. Depends on the person, right? Depends on the boss, depends on the person. And if you layer onto that they're being a bit of an asshat and making you feel a certain way, like you're now afraid to ask questions and that kind of stuff, I can totally get the feeling around that. What is going on here? Sorry, I shouldn't read messages. I just got pinged on something for work. And we're not moving at all, so I looked. So that kind of situation, especially as a junior, can be like, what's a good phrase for this? Like, like your hands feel tied, right? Like you're like, I feel like I'm stuck on things, or I have questions about things and I can't make progress on them because now I don't want to ask questions, because if I ask questions, my boss is mean to me. I don't like when they're mean to me. Why are they mean to me, right? Like, and then you're like, well, if I don't make progress, then they're going to be mean to me because I'm not making progress. And it's this like vicious cycle of like nothing good comes out of this. Okay, so I wanted to, like, I just wanted to say this out loud, right? Like I understand why that would be terrible. I don't know, as someone that's a little bit older now and I've seen some shit at this point, I guess, I would say, like, at no point, I wouldn't, this is just me, I'm not saying that this is the advice, but at no point now in my career would I ever tolerate something like that. And the reason I'm saying that's not advice I have to give here is, like, I could understand that maybe this person's circumstance is, like, They're like, okay, but like I can't just like snap my fingers and get another job. Like, I don't know if I could either. I don't know if I could either. I would love to be able to say that confidently, but I can't, I don't know these things. But fortunately, if I had to not work for a little bit, I would still be okay. I don't know other people's circumstances, so I'm not going to advise like, hey, just like get rid of this guy, you're fine. I don't know that. So it's not what I want to suggest, but I want to talk through different perspectives on this so that we could try to build some understanding. I'm coming in, buddy. You're letting me in. You drive a BMW. Oh, but they use a signal to go the other way. Amazing. Not something that you would expect in real life, at least. So it's not something I would tolerate because I have seen the impact that it has on other people, right? I've had to even coach and work with people that have gone through stuff like this. There is a woman on LinkedIn that has reached out to me before and described like a toxic environment where, basically not given a place with psychological safety and made to feel pretty terrible. And, we talked through it. And, she's been very thankful that just to have the perspective, like, this is not supposed to be an acceptable thing. Okay, so I would like this person to know that's going through this. The reality is you should not necessarily tolerate, people making you feel like shit. And this isn't software engineering advice. This is life advice. That's just the reality of it. Now, if you're in a situation where you're like, okay, that's nice, Nick, but I can't just walk away from the job, we'll try to touch on some of that, okay? So I wanted to get this part out in the beginning because I can understand that if this is someone's kind of like first experience is working, that maybe they start to think that this is normal. And I don't want them to go through their whole career or start their career off like forming this expectation that it's normal. And for folks that are listening or watching and they're like, yeah, well, that is normal. That's what I had to go through. It's not normal. It's not good. And I don't care if you went through it and you want to try to normalize it. It's just not. The problem with normalizing it, and when I say I don't care, I don't mean like I'm not sorry that you went through it, because that's crappy. I don't want you to have to go through it. But I don't think it's acceptable to try and normalize it, because what happens is that people that normalize this later in their career, it's very much like bullying. Oh my God, you're not supposed to pull out there. Dummy. Anyway, we shouldn't normalize this stuff, because just like bullying, later on people go, well, that's normal, right? Like, I went through it. This is how it worked. Like, it's not. Don't do it. It's a shit thing to do to someone else, so don't do it. Okay? Like, we're not supposed to create these environments for people where they're like afraid of trying to work and do their best effort, so don't do it. You don't want that to happen to you. And it's not a matter of like, oh, people are just being soft. Like, give me a break, man. Like, people are like just starting off their careers and now they're afraid to ask questions. Like, it's not okay. So if you are someone that has experienced this, instead of trying to make it normal, I actually mentored, like very briefly, did like aspiring manager mentorship. And one of the things that this manager said to me, or aspiring manager said to me, was like, he's had some really crap managers in his career. And he's like, those are all the things that I want to make sure that I can, like, I want to make sure those never happen to other people. Like, I want to be the manager that, like, this kind of stuff doesn't happen with my employees. Like, I will not do that to them because it happened to me and it's garbage. So I would love if people took that perspective, right? Don't normalize it because it was a crappy thing and that means other people have to go through it too. No, it's no good. We want to create environments with psychological safety. Okay. Gotta bring my blood pressure down. I wanted to talk though about like how do we navigate this, right? And as I start to go through this, what you might notice is like I want to clarify this before I get into it. I am not siding with the boss in this case, okay? I'm not siding with the boss because I don't think that this is acceptable behavior. But in order to try and understand what's going on, you will see me start to try and look at things from different perspectives. And in isolation, you might say, well, Nick, it sounds like you're agreeing with the boss and defending him, and I'm not. Okay, but I think in order to understand these things, we do have to look at them from different angles. And we call that empathy. It doesn't mean that I'm defending them, but we're trying to understand the lens at which people are looking at things, okay? So now that's out of the way. Still someone's probably going to comment and say, I can't believe you would condone making people feel unsafe in the workplace. And they can't ask questions. I'm not saying that. But with that said, so it's a startup. I believe this person said it's the founder, right? Their boss is the founder, and it's the only other dev. And they feel like they're pissing off their boss or agitating them. They're kind of scared to ask questions now. What I wanted to start looking at was like let's understand maybe what's happening, okay? So again, not defending anyone. This person who is the founder, I'm assuming maybe this person's not aware, and maybe viewers aren't really aware, or maybe you are. But if you're trying to run a business and you're paying employees, like there's going to be this astronomical amount of pressure that's on you. And this is something that founders have to take on. Again, it's not an excuse for being a D-bag, but it's sort of a reality that happens, right? Like there's going to be an enormous amount of stress. And when I heard, I'm trying to think of a good way, like my previous employer, the founder, I probably heard it from both the founder and the CEO. They're at different points in different ways, but I believe the founder said something like, you know, this idea like that he had to go take some product that he was building and then start to form a company around it. It wasn't so much like, I don't think he felt like, oh man, like the technology is going to be the impossible thing or the sales and marketing is going to be the impossible thing. But I feel like the scary thing was like, I'm now responsible for the livelihood of other people, which is a kind of a crazy thing to say because the product was literally for digital forensics and it got used for helping save lives of like, you know, especially like, unfortunately, like sexually abused children, for helping catch pedophiles and, you know, prove their like innocence or guilty. So used in really extreme situations. And he's still saying like this kind of like, what's the word, like this burden of being able to ensure that he can help like ensure people have jobs, right? This extra layer of like, not only am I running this business, we got to get people buying, you know, we have to, you know, we have software, we have to make sure it's doing the right thing for law enforcement, investigators, examiners, but like I have people that are relying on me to support their own families. So it's this astronomical amount of pressure. Okay, so what I want to be able to do here is, again, we're trying to even empathize with someone that we feel like is being an asshole. I get it, but like, let's see that, right? Like, so we have that going on. This person's probably under tremendous stress. Now, especially, oh my God, these people driving. Now this guy's going to tailgate him. He's pissed off. Not a good recipe. You have someone who's under a ton of stress. It's a startup. It's a small company, right? They need like, it's want and need. They need and want their hires to be up to speed very quickly. But the problem with that is like, We can't just snap our fingers and make it happen, especially if someone's junior and brand new to a company. It's going to take time. It's very rare that people are just awesome and effective without any hand holding, especially if they're junior, right? So it's probably another layer of stress for this guy's like, man, like, we hired this person, like, it's almost like, stop asking questions, just get the work done. Like, that's why we hired you, right? But the reality is it doesn't work like that at all. And in fact, this is one of the challenging things is like, and I talked about this in previous vlog entries, right? Like, it's actually going to get worse before it gets better if he's doing a good job with it. He needs to take the time to teach and coach. It's the only way. I shouldn't say only way. It's not fair. It's, in my opinion, the way to go when you're trying to get people onboarded. Otherwise, you're either going to scare people away or when you go to help, you're just giving answers to make the person go away. And it's not good. It's not sustainable. So the first thing I wanted to do here was empathize with the employer so that we can understand where some of this stuff comes from. Again, not supporting it, not defending it, but I think we need to understand it or try to. Now, all the things I'm saying might be completely off base. Maybe this person is like, I don't, whatever, it's fine. Like, I got money in the bank. I could pay whatever employee. It doesn't matter. Maybe everything I said was completely irrelevant and they have a health issue that we don't know about and they're totally stressed about that. It could be anything. My point is that if we go through this thought exercise of trying to understand why someone might be acting a certain way, then we can try to approach things, okay? Because otherwise it's like we're not doing anything and we're just going to sit here and be scared, and that's not good either. Okay, so if we start to understand that maybe this person they're agitated, they're stressed, or they got all these things going on, okay, let's make that assumption, and that would explain the behavior, does not make it right, but it at least explains why it's happening. Okay, so what are some things that maybe we could start to think about? How could we start to approach our interactions that would help minimize some of this? At least not exacerbate it, right? And to give you an example, we don't know this about the person that wrote the comment. Perhaps, I'm just going to make this up to exaggerate, perhaps regularly throughout the day, they're sitting there and asking questions, okay? So they got, and I feel like rightfully so because they're new and they're like, I don't know what this does. Tell me what this does. How does this work? I got lots of questions. So they're constantly asking them. But maybe they don't realize that the rate at which they're asking questions or how they're asking questions even is disruptive. Perhaps, right? I'm just making these scenarios up. Perhaps it's disruptive and the cadence is too frequent, and it ends up meaning that this person that's already stressed trying to get something done from a programming perspective feels like they're constantly being interrupted and they can't get some focus time. So they're agitated, they're stressed, and now they're being constantly interrupted. Okay, not a good spot to be in. Again, doesn't give them a good reason to be an asshole. I'll keep saying it. So what could we do here, right? So maybe it's a matter of, okay, if it's a frequency of questions type of thing, maybe what we could do is, if we were in this position, we could say, okay, I got a couple questions, and instead of going to this person every 20 minutes, 30 minutes, every hour, maybe what I could do is work on what I can for the day, and in my notebook, I could I could write down a few things, and I could, at the end of the day, say, hey, like, do you have some time? And I have a few questions that maybe we could go through and you can answer for me. Pardon me, sorry. I felt way better all day, but I don't have any water, so now my throat's getting very dry. So you're reducing the cadence, right? So And again, if you're more junior, maybe you haven't realized this kind of thing yet, but breaking focus can be very, very costly. So it's the same number of questions. It's just that doing them in a batch means that they can carve out some time to do it. And they're not taking this hit of multiple interruptions kind of spread out. That might be one thing, right? By the way, you'll maybe get the hint that there could be a million different things that you could try to do here. So I'm not trying to give you an exhaustive list. I'm trying to get you to think about, if we understand why someone might be acting a certain way, we can try to navigate it. Perhaps it's not even the volume of questions, it's how they're being asked. And I'll give you an example of something that really bothers me. Okay? I am, and don't take advantage of this. Someone definitely will, but because I've seen this kind of thing happen before when I say it. I get very, very agitated when I get a message that just says, "Hey, Nick." Hi, hello, hey, Nick. And that's it. I get very agitated. And it's funny, my wife works in psychology, and anytime I've mentioned to her, like, this kind of thing makes me upset, she's like, that's completely irrational. And I feel like I need to explain it. But you probably, maybe for folks that are new, maybe not, for folks that have been in industry for a while, you probably heard of like no hello. And basically it's this idea that, like, if you want to communicate with me asynchronously, that's totally cool. But just, if you're gonna say hello or hi, like, that's totally fine, but put in the rest of what you're trying to ask or talk about. Because when you don't, the implication is that, to me, it feels like you're forcing synchronous communication. Otherwise, you're allowing very, very ineffective asynchronous communication. You say to me, "Hey, Nick," and then I don't respond to you for I don't know, we're in different geographies, so 12 hours later, like whatever it is, I say, "Hey, John," and then 12 hours later, you're like, "So, Nick, I was thinking about this thing. Do you have time to talk about it?" And then 12 hours later, I'm like, "Hey, sure, John, I have some time. You should schedule the call." And then 12 hours later, John's like, "Awesome, sounds good, Nick. Is this day free?" Do you see how ridiculous this is? How much time that wastes? Like, that, it literally pisses me off. Because I go through the whole thought exercise of, how much time are we going to waste here? I know it sounds kind of irrational now that I'm saying it, but the other thing is that if it's not purely wasting time, to me, it feels like forcing synchronous communication. Because now it feels like maybe you have the expectation that I'm going to respond to you, and you're waiting there so that you can be prompted back, so now that you can ask me the thing. If you just instead ask the thing, then I can, as soon as I'm available and can answer, I can literally give you the information that you need. It blows my mind. And it makes me, maybe it is irrational, my wife is usually right, so I'll give her that. But like, it really drives me nuts, and I know I'm not alone. Maybe you are like me. But my point with going into this is, like, perhaps how you're asking questions is not helping. Sorry. My goodness. So it might be, you can even have a conversation about it, right? Or maybe kind of do a reflection on how you're asking questions. In my previous entries for Code Commute, I was talking about trying to do stuff first, right? If you've ensured that you've tried doing some things first, you're not getting someone else to start off with a blank slate for you. They feel like, okay, like, this person is doing something. They are putting some effort in. They are trying to learn and get better. Great. Okay. What are you stuck on? Let's talk through it, right? What have you tried so far? That's the cue. So maybe that's a reflection that you want to do, and see, can I be communicating more effectively? So we talked about cadence, maybe the delivery, right? These are things. This comes up a lot, and I know it's like significantly easier said than done, but I still like to talk about it because I think that it drives like ridiculously good, like positive improvements in like working relationships. So I wanted to talk through this idea. And I'm not picking on this person that left the comment, and I'm not picking on anyone that is asking for help about like interpersonal things. But I'm gonna say it, and it might sound like ridiculously straightforward and maybe condescending. That's not my intention. It's just to get a little bit of a shock factor. Okay, but like, why don't you talk to the person about it? I don't know. Sorry, this person doesn't realize that there's technically only one lane here, except a turning lane, and they don't have their turn signal on. So they're basically about to do something really funny. Oh no! They turned right. They did turn right without their signal, and they waited the entire light that they could have turned right on and just didn't do it. I don't know what's worse, to be honest. But now I'm stuck behind them. And he pissed off for the next 5 minutes. Okay. But I mean, it sounds kind of funny, right? Like, why don't you go talk to the person about it? And I know the answer. I know the answer is because it's friggin' weird. It's difficult. No one likes doing it. So we avoid it. I get it. No one likes doing it. I totally get it. Right? But we need to do it more. And I can promise you it gets easier. And I would mostly guarantee, because I can't speak for everyone, but I would mostly guarantee that you're going to have a positive outcome in some capacity. And the reason that's the case is because conversations like this are hard. They're hard. If someone needed to have a difficult conversation with me, and this has happened before on multiple occasions, if someone needed to have a difficult conversation with me and they kind of muster up the courage and they have the conversation with me and they have to tell me whether it's feedback, whether it's something that's difficult for them to admit, whatever it is, like, there is a lot of respect that I have for that person for doing it because they didn't shy away from doing it. Okay, so don't get me wrong. I understand that this working relationship for you now has made you kind of fearful of your boss, right? Your manager, who is the other dev. I understand that, but there could be an opportunity here where you talk to them about it. Now, you might say, well, they're definitely going to get more angry or they're definitely going to fire me. And here's what I have to say, right? Like, the situation already sounds pretty shit, unfortunately, right? Like, if there's a psychological safety problem where you don't feel like you can do things without being, chewed out for it, it already sounds pretty bad. So, is it gonna get much worse if you talk about it or bring it up? A genuine question, because you might say, oh yeah, I could see this getting a lot worse. In which case, don't take my advice, that's fine. But is it gonna get much worse? If they were to fire you, is that actually the worst thing that could happen to you right now? Because it sounds like maybe the situation's pretty bad. And maybe you would say, well, yeah, then I don't have a job and it's impossible to get a job and I don't want that to happen. Okay, so don't take my advice, that's fine. But I want you to go through the thought exercise, because one of the outcomes of this is like, oh, then they understand that I'm having some challenges and I'm feeling like I, can't navigate things properly, and I want to improve the scenario. Like, I want to make it better. And maybe they don't have total awareness that they're making you feel a certain way. So if they don't have a feedback loop, they can't drive change either. Okay, so I get that it's a hard suggestion to listen to because you're like, it's not going to go well. That's going to be really hard. I know. But if you kind of weigh out the pros and cons of it, be honest with yourself, like, am I just being fearful of having a conversation? Or, like, truthfully, the cons of having such a conversation are so great that you're like, no, it's not going to fly. Okay. Now, what I will say is that in my experience, having really difficult conversations feels really crappy in the short term. It feels terrible. But I have not yet had an experience in my own career or from talking with others where I've coached them through this, where having a difficult conversation has made things worse. It has only either stayed the same or made things much better. So it's just a thought, but if you're kind of struggling to find ways to improve the working relationship with your superior, I might, take some time and say, hey, look, like, and we should maybe kind of frame up, like, how does this actually look, right? Because what you probably don't want to do is say, hey, boss, you make me feel like shit. Because probably not teeing that one up too great. But you could, if we're leaning into, like, what's back to that thought around empathy, they're stressed. They got a lot going on. They know they have someone new. They're trying to help ramp up, but they're already kind of like I said, they're stressed out. They got just too many things to focus on. You could say, like, hey, look, like, I realize I'm asking lots of questions. Okay, so kind of acknowledging, like, what's going on. I want to make sure that I can ramp up effectively. Okay, like leaning in again to things that they're going to want. So I'm trying to do a good job. I want to get ramped up effectively. I realize I'm asking lots of questions. And then you could talk about how you feel. So, like, it kind of feels like to me like I might be, maybe I'm bothering if I'm asking too many questions, or it might be distracting just because I'm trying to help here. So could you talk me through, like, are there better ways that I could be doing this? Like, do you have any suggestions around, like, how I could get unblocked or approach asking questions so that I can be effective without distracting you too much? Okay, so this is, you take it, do whatever you want with it. But the idea is kind of like, let me acknowledge what I believe the other person is feeling. Let me explain some of how I'm feeling. You're also putting your goals out there, which, if someone was trying to say to me, I'm just trying to find ways to help you, like, I'm just trying to find ways to be more effective and help you. And I'm not sure the best way to do that. Could you give me some advice with how to help you? I feel like it would be really difficult to be upset with that person about it. I know it's one more question, right? It's one more question to just layer on, but I feel like it's very difficult to be upset with someone for wanting to do good. Okay, so I am backing up into the driveway. That was actually a really fast drive. But a quick reminder that no, I don't think at this point in my career I wouldn't take crap like that. I've said it. I think I've said it. Maybe not on Code Commute, but I've said, if I had a boss yell at me, if I had a boss yell or try to embarrass me in front of a group of people, like belittle me, I would resign on the spot. And it's not for fear. It's because you don't get to do that to me. Because I'm an adult and I literally do not have to put up with shit like that, because I won't put up with shit like that for my parents. So you're not above my parents. You're not doing that to me. So that's how I would approach things at this stage of my career. I have, like I said, My circumstances may be very different from yours. Maybe this is something that you are like, I'm going to tolerate this because I don't have other options right now. It is not the normal thing. So please do not kind of grow into your career assuming that it's acceptable to be mean to other people, to create environments that are not uh, conducive for psychological safety. So if everyone's fearful of making mistakes, no bueno. We don't want that. If people are afraid to ask questions, nope, not okay. So as you become more senior in your career, because you will continue to grow and get better, and there will be other jobs and other roles, you're going to do awesome. You don't want to mirror and mimic this behavior that you saw early on in your career. In fact, I would love if you remember how this feels and how it's not good, and that you can be part of making that better for other people. I feel like that's why I try to have these conversations, because I've had a pretty good career. I don't have a ton of things where I'm like, oh man, it's always been mean people to me. And I want to remind people, like, it's almost like the opposite, right? I have had really good experiences, and they are out there. And I've seen people and heard from people that have had really terrible experiences. And, we can, as we grow in our careers, we can be part of making that experience better for other people. So keep that in mind. Empathy is important. I hope that when we were like talking through that, you could see it's really awkward and difficult to try and have empathy for someone you're like, man, they're making me feel bad. Totally get it. That's why I had to have like 100 disclaimers, but I think going through that is helpful. I think that's almost always like a very helpful thing, is like to try and at least understand some of the other perspective. Doesn't mean you have to, this is the important part. You don't have to agree with it, right? I don't agree with being stressed out and taking it out on people. No, that's like when I said the hello, like, hey, Nick, and just leaving it there. And that pisses me off. You know what I don't do? I don't say, hey, Jimmy, why don't you never message me again, you complete idiot? Why are you so stupid? I don't do that. I just don't like it. Now, what I should be doing, if I channel some of my wife's advice, is I should let Jimmy know in this case. So Jimmy says, hey, Nick. And I say, hey, Jimmy, what's up? Just heads up, by the way, if you're trying to get a hold of me, it's actually really helpful if you just kind of give me the whole message. That way, when I get some time, I can respond to you right away. And that way, I won't keep you held up. Jimmy. I don't think I know a Jimmy. So sorry if you're watching this, your name's Jimmy and you're feeling awkward now. But like, we don't have excuses to be mean to other people. So even though I have these situations for myself where I'm like, that really grinds my gears, it's not an excuse. It's just not. So don't do it. And I think one of the last things that I was trying to talk through is like, difficult conversations, right? They're difficult, but they can be really beneficial to get through. Sometimes they're the most difficult part was just made up in your head, right? You kind of live through every possible terrible option that you're thinking about, and you go to have one of these difficult conversations, and the person's just actually very receptive. And they're like, yeah, like I have been noticing that I have been pretty stressed out, and like, I was thinking about this the other day. Maybe I was maybe a little short with you. I've been trying to do a better job of this when I am stressed out working from home, and I am working with some of the guys on Brand Ghost, because sometimes I will notice that I'm jumping between something, and I'll send a message and like it's short because I'm rushing between stuff and because maybe I'm agitated and it's not work, right? And then I'm like, no, but these guys are like, these are some of my best friends. Like, it's not an excuse to be an ass. So I'm consciously trying to practice, like, how did I just say that? Like, and sometimes it will take me a little bit. Maybe it's like 30 minutes, an hour later. I'm like, hey, by the way, sorry. Like, because I'm reflecting on this. I'm like, I shouldn't say things like that. It's not my intention. And just try to commit to doing better. So soft skills. Soft skills are important. We got to practice them. I hope that was helpful for you, commenter. I didn't get your name, so I apologize for that. Lots to think about, right? And ultimately, you have to choose your own path. So I think the best that I can do is just offer you different perspectives on things and give you some stuff to think through. So hope it helps. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.